According to ancient and medieval sciences, aether, also spelled ether, aether, or ether, and also called quintessence, the fifth element, is the material that fills the region of the universe above the terrestrial sphere. Scientifically, space is the boundless three-dimensional extent in which objects and events have relative positions and directions. Physical space is often conceived in three linear dimensions, although modern physicists usually consider it, with time, to be part of a boundless four-dimensional continuum known as space-time. The concept of space is considered to be of fundamental importance to an understanding of the physical universe. The element of design space refers to the area within, around, and above or below an object or objects, very important to creating and understanding both two-dimensional or three-dimensional spaces. Space is one of the elements of design of architecture, as space is continuously studied for its usage. Architectural designs are created by carving space out of space, creating space out of space, and designing spaces by dividing this space using various tools such as geometry, colors, and shapes. Space encompasses the volume of a structure, the parts of a building or place we move through and experience. But space can only be created through the use of form. Form is the mass or grouping of materials used to give a building its shape. Humans do not ordinarily perceive a binocular space, which means a separate visual world from each eye, but instead a so called cyclopean space, as if the images from each eye fuse to produce a single visual field. We use our eyes to visually probe a space, making thousands of subconscious computations every second. Wayfinding, orientation, direction, etc., all come from visual clues. The lens of our eye with a 22 mm focal length allows us to experience perspective space in a consistent and readable way. Based on its English lexical concepts, space are supposed to be of three types: geographical space, living space, and the interior or central architectural space. But I consider space as the stage set on which all the life in this universe is enacted. It is the basis of architecture, from which architecture obtains its characteristics. Psychologists first began to study the way space is perceived in the middle of the 19th century. Those now concerned with such studies regard it as a distinct branch of psychology. The perception of surroundings is important due to its necessary relevance to survival, especially with regards to hunting and self preservation, as well as simply one's idea of personal space. The understanding of three-dimensional space in humans is thought to be learned during infancy using unconscious inference and is closely related to hand eye coordination. The visual ability to perceive the world in three dimensions is called depth perception. Several space related phobias have been identified, including agoraphobia, that is the fear of open spaces, astrophobia, the fear of celestial space, and claustrophobia, the fear of enclosed spaces, etc. With most of our lives spent indoors, the space we occupy has a major role in our psychological behavior. Environmental psychology or space psychology is, in fact, the interaction between people and the spaces they inhabit. There are several factors which address the senses of the individuals like scale, proportion, color, etc., and generate a spectrum of feelings and practices, from inducing warmth and safety, defining well-being, or creating a positive and efficient work. It has a lot of impact on how we act or how we feel. Therefore, design and creative measures should be considered according to social and psychological needs of the occupants. With the rise of functionality in the last decades, space became a mere reflection of the program it holds. People were stacked in boxes to produce.
What happened? Sound? Sound नहीं है. Mute हो गई. You are mute. Mute. No sound. Okay.
No, ma'am.
Now it's okay. Now I can.
Okay. Till now you could not hear?
No, just about 5 seconds.
Okay.
5 to
Okay,
10
5
seconds.
seconds. Okay. People were stacked in boxes actually to produce and feed into a consumer oriented society. In fact, this idea of just cramming individuals in any place started as the Industrial Revolution brought a flux of people into non equipped cities. The regular house plan was divided to accommodate as many newcomers as it could contain or retain. Homes and jobs were oriented towards fast paced production. Usage of space and the psychological understanding behind it came much later in the future. Ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening, namaskars, and a warm welcome to all of you to our Simple Talks 21 on the psychology of spaces. And allow me to welcome architect Shirish Beri as our esteemed speaker of the day to enlighten us on this very important topic. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Uh, a little or a very brief introduction to Berry sir, though he doesn't need any introduction. Berry sir's work, which tends to reflect his values in life, has been bearing their distinct mark on modern Indian architecture since 1975. They strive to address his life concerns of man, moving further away from nature, from his fellow human beings, and from his own self. Through his work, Shirish Beri also probes the multisensory and the immeasurable dimension of space while trying to evoke a reflective pause amidst today's clutter and background noise. His designs try to achieve an inherent sense of unity and harmony with various natural and man made elements to become as sustainable as possible. He also finds expression through painting, sketching, writing poetry, photography, film, and organic farming. He has designed a number of campuses for national and regional level institutions for research, rehabilitation, healthcare, and education, along with various other types of buildings. He has been very widely published in over 150 publications in India and abroad, and his work has won him a number of national and international recognitions. Two of his designs were nominated for the Aga Khan Award in 2010. He has won the Acacia Gold Medal twice for the Best Design Public Building and Residence in Asia. His project was shortlisted by Architectural Review Cityscape Awards as one of the three best designed public buildings in the world. He has been awarded the highly coveted A plus D Sierra Hall of the Fame Award and JK Great Masters Award that is awarded for architects' contribution to architecture in the past 4 decades. This prestigious JK Award is given once in 3 years to only one senior architect selected from 11 countries. He has been invited to chair, act as jury, conduct design workshops, and give talks, slide shows in various professional and educational institutions in India and in many other countries. He has also held two exhibitions, Search for Wholeness and Urmi. He has made two films, The Unfolding White and Uru the Space. We will be seeing today this famous movie Uru the Space today, immediately after Siris's presentation. And he has also written two books, Spaces Inspired by Nature and Wanderings and Ponderings, on his work and life that have been received very well everywhere. We'll also be seeing some part of that book today in Sir's presentation. So, who better than Shirish sir to be talking about space when you can see how the amount of work that he has done on spaces and his work that he has been doing. There are some questions. While some spaces add to your anxiety, others provide a sense of serenity. And you can't seem to know why. In fact, not always evidence based. Environmental psychology focuses more on research, on people's interaction with their surroundings. Irving Weiner states that some of these environmental influences we cannot see or touch, but they have a direct influence on our behavior or mood and physical health in extreme scenario or in the long run. Let us find out from about how architects and designers perceive space and find these answers from our esteemed speaker, architect Shirish Beri. Please, sir, may I request you to make your presentation?
Good evening, and thank you. I thank Neelam Manjunath, CGMT, and Dayalbagh University, Agra, for conducting these special webinars and inviting me to present today. Space is a beautiful enigma that has fascinated me for a very long time, to such an extent that I have even made a film on this ignored, taken for granted subject. It's called Uru, the Space. As we are going to see this film after my presentation, I'm keeping my presentation a little short. As Neelam was just talking about the importance of space, I also would say that we can live without food and water for a few days and without air also for a few minutes. But we cannot live without space even for a nanosecond. As architects, it is our main medium of work. The beauty of it is that space in itself is infinite, immeasurable, formless, and attributeless. Where we, through our designs, make it finite, measurable, with diverse forms. We lend it multiple attributes that decide on the quality of space. As one delves deeper into this concept of space, one encounters two kinds of spaces, which are also mentioned in our scriptures. One is the measurable, visible, tangible outer space called the Bhutakash, the space in which we move around, and the immeasurable, invisible, intangible inner space called Chidakash or Chitakash, the space within our mind and subconscious, in our attitudes and values. Both are continuously influencing each other. I'll start with the presentation. Yes. So both these are continuously influencing each other. If this is the integrally interconnected and interdependent scenario of our inner and outer spaces, both need to be dealt with simultaneously. Shall we? I'll just yeah. Next viewer. अरे वो हमेशा इधर था. What's this yellow line? What is that yellow line that has come up
Don't worry,
on the
sir.
screen?
That's nothing. No,
You
I
don't
think
see
your cursor movement or something would have. The
something it
cursor
has.
movement must have come, but no problem, sir.
Yes.
Nothing to worry.
Okay. Okay. Let's take a look at this outer space. This outer space in nature. Now, what it does, like when we go there, it does have some effect on our inner space, on our moods. It makes us more tranquil, more peaceful, more harmonious. But now, at the same time, our inner space is also affecting this outer space. Like our inner space in some areas has made this space like this, because our inner space has become so greedy, consumeristic, and it is become so selfish, and it looks at man as a someone different from this overall scheme of things, it doesn't, I mean, doesn't have any problems in making this kind of a scenario. Now, when the inner space is more harmonious, the social, and it is more responsive to the social, cultural, and the climate there, we have outer spaces like this or like this. But when our inner space becomes incoherent, isolated, greedy, and consumeristic, we have something like this happening, which is our today's outer space. There are two images of the about just a kilometer away in Ladakh. Look at this beautiful village of the natives there. See how it is located on the hill slopes and how it is organized in a very organic manner. Whereas, look at the new development just a kilometer away, made by the army. This outer space is created because of the security, the supervision, and the irresponsiveness to the climate and topography there. Space has different connotations. Now look at this. I mean, 143 million people live in such a big area on this earth, whereas 165 million people live in this small space here in Bangladesh, and that's Russia. Now, the concept of space for both these inhabitants would be different. Technology has also changed our concept of space. The kind of space that was required earlier is now just taken up by a small mobile now in our lives. The concept of a bedroom or a space to sleep is very different too. You can see here or here a person sleeping under the car. This is where they sleep. That's the bedroom. This is another kind of bedroom, capsule hotel, or this is the other one, the other extreme. The concept of space for sleeping is so different in so many different places. Or it could be something like this: a simple bedroom in my own house, my own lake house. Even the space, the transitional space, or the space, the interface between the building and the road is so different in so many places because of the uh, again the attitudes and the values of the people. Like can see the kind of relationship these people have with the road, or these people have with the road, and compare that to this relationship which these people have with the street. Or this, there are two extremes. Like one is this is very near each other. Like this, the inmate of this place wants to be exclusive, wants to be isolated, wants to have privacy, wants to be disconnected with the outside world. So he has built such a big wall for his big villa inside. And whereas this is another interface in a nearby city where the house, the building, and the road have such a beautiful interface, the space in between. Now, shall we quickly run through some examples of spaces designed by me where the user has expressed a decisive impact on his or her inner space? This was a site in Nagpur. There was a 12 acre of farmland, and the resident was from Nagpur, and they wanted to wanted me to design a farmhouse here. They wanted me to design somewhere here, but when I walked around the entire site, I was fascinated by these two trees here. This was the Beda, and this was the banyan tree here. So, and I kind of sat down under the tree and almost took his permission to build there. And I told them that I would like to build a house here. And so the house happened something like this, with the banyan tree here and the Beda tree here. And when I was sitting here, I sensed a certain kind of a rapport between the banyan tree and the beda tree, which I tried to strengthen with by introducing this lap pool in between. And the banyan tree is located in such a way in this space that it can be seen from almost all the rooms in the house. Sorry, the entrance to the house is from the a small alley which I have created, because from outside you don't see the banyan tree much. But when you come here, you have the vista of the banyan tree here, and till it opens out as you enter in. So this is the entrance to the house, and then the courtyard around which the house has been designed. This is the banyan tree as seen from the beda tree with the lap pool in between, and this is the beda tree as seen from the banyan tree. Now, these spaces which have been created have had such an impact on the user that he used to call me every 2 or 3 months and say, कि, यार शिरीष इधर बहुत सुकून आता है, means he's feeling so tranquil, so peaceful, so contented here. And every time he would discover something new in this space and tell me that this space is doing something to him. Once he called, this was the tree earlier, and that was the beda tree earlier, where as it was on the site, and then it has become something like this as a part of the house with the veranda here. And he would call me, and then once he called me and he said that this he was a very short-tempered person, and he would fly into a road rage also sometimes when there was a parking problem or some traffic problem. But he told me of an incident where he himself was surprised that he was not angry, and he was very cool about a certain road road rage incident. Even from the living room, the tree is always there. The dining room, with the reflection of the tree in the dining table, on the dining table. Then we have the another a school building which I had done many years back. It was in the hills in Panchgani, where there were so many existing trees on site. And so we retained most of the trees. Some of the trees came through the building. And one of my favorite trees, the ficus tree, became the courtyard, the central courtyard of this building, with the primary school kids studying and staying around it. It's a learning living cluster with the tree as the backdrop. One interesting thing which happened was when I went there after a few years, 3 years, and I talked to the teachers how they found themselves, how did they find it. They said the space was really very nice, and it had quietened the kids. It made them more creative. They're more happy here in this place. And then she told me that she had given them these small kids an essay to write on my best friend. And surprisingly, 50% of the kids wrote an essay on this tree as their best friend. Now, this is what space can do. Because of their relationship with this tree, with the relationship that they have developed with this tree in their formative years, these kids would hesitate to cut a tree when they grow old. And this is what space can do. This is another example was this drug de-addiction center that I did in Pune. When I discussed the psychology of the addict with the doctors there, they said that the addict doesn't like to be left by himself or herself. Group therapy always helps. So that is why we created this kind of an amphitheater where group activities could be encouraged and people could be in touch with each other even from the upper levels. And I was once surprised that we had normally in the wards, we had provided beds in the wards for the patients with about 1.2 meter gap in between, like you have in all hospital wards. But when I went to visit them, sorry, when I went to visit them, I found that they had joined about 3-4 beds together, and they were all sitting in a group and playing cards or carom or things like that. So they want this physical proximity. So that was one thing that I realized about what they their perception of space. And the second one was another interesting point was when I was traveling or moving around here, an addict, a person came and asked me whether I had designed this building because somebody must have told him. I said yes. Then he told me his story. He said that he was a patient here in this building for 5 weeks. 5 weeks is the period that they have to stay there for 5 weeks. And he said that this blue sky, which is seen in this space, was his inspiration to be cured. I was surprised because I said, how come? He says that was the symbol of the outside world for me. And that was beckoning me to leave my addiction and come back to the outer world. So these are things which, subtle things, immeasurable things, which spaces embody and express in the users. Then we had this site in Hyderabad where we had these huge rocks on the edge of the site, and then I convinced my clients to exchange some good piece of land on that side and get the rugged land on this side so that I could build around it. And I fell in love with these trees and with these rocks. Sorry, with these rocks. It's almost a million-year old natural heritage. I've set up my small studio here for 3 days and designed so that my building became a tribute to this national heritage. Now, this here we are talking about how spaces can influence work also. Like we had Dr. Abdul Kalam, the President of India, who came to inaugurate this building. So when he started off his lecture, he said that I would like to meet the architect of this building because I'm sure the scientists working here will enjoy their work in this environment. So this is what spaces can do, and it would create an atmosphere congenial to learning. This is the view of those stone rocks from inside. That's the pedestrian entrance. And this is how the scientists can interact and get with each other and improve their work efficiency also. Compared to the typical work scenario that we have today. And this is the kind of work scenario in the office environment in which most people work. When I was asked to design a computational mathematics lab for the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research in Pune, they also were thinking of something like this. But then I said, okay, you have something similar inside, a little bit, of course, better than this. But also, we could have some semi-open, semi-outdoor spaces where some of the scientists could sit with their laptops under a tree and under the shade of the creepers and work. The director liked the idea, and so finally we could do that, execute it. I myself work in such environments. I normally sit like this and do my designs. I'm facing the sea at my beach house. And this is my lake house now with my colleagues, with my associates. So now let's just take one kind of space, uh, the hospital arrival space, and see how it can act as a damper or as a catalyst in the healing process. Because my movie is going to talk a lot more about space and a lot more dimensions and their attributes of space. I am going to talk about only one kind of space now today. Like this is the kind of scenario that we see in most public hospitals or common big hospitals, where there is this crowding and it totally is lack of natural light and ventilation. It's all artificially lit and maybe artificially ventilated or non-ventilated. Now, this I wanted to change. I wanted to create hospitals with the arrival lobbies uh, symbolizing health through nature. Like if I thought that if my arrival lobby would have natural light and ventilation and some nature, it would automatically bring about a sense of, uh, it would act in the, it would contribute in the process of healing. It would act as a catalyst in this healing process. So this was a craniofacial hospital that I did, a hospital that worked in only this much part of the body. It's a maxillofacial or craniofacial hospital. This is the entrance lobby. People can sit around in a more informal manner. Then even the operation theater here has a terrace garden with a big glass window. There's a double glazing here, so the sterility inside the building, inside the operation theater is maintained. This is the arrival lobby of a large, about a 5.5 lakh square feet. That is more than 500,000 square feet hospital uh, with for more than 500 beds, 550 beds. There's not a single natural light on, and there's because of the side courtyards on both the sides, there's good ventilation possible also. Same place. Even and at the entrance, when people come from here, at the entrance we have a large idol of Ganesha, which is just a symbolic gesture, uh, which gives kind of a psychological relief to most patients. Then we have another hospital and nearby. This is more than 3.5 lakh square feet, more than 350 beds. This is the arrival lobby, which extends onto these courtyards, these landscaped courtyards on both the sides. This is the kind of seven-storied hospital. But what I'm trying to convey is what space can do, what kind of a impact these outer spaces can have on the patients, the troubled patients and their relatives. In a dental pediatric dental ward, the pediatric the waiting space for the children is designed like this. Then we have another hospital in a crowded, in a very restricted city urban plot. So we have a basement below, so we don't have natural soil here. So we had to put potted plants. So this here again, what the entire this picture is taken without any artificial light. It's just the natural light, and there's beautiful natural ventilation here in the summer. We don't need any air conditioning. The same hospital. These acrodomes bring in light into the basement. This is the same counter, and like from every floor, the relationship with this main atrium lobby. We have also created a small meditation hall where patients or their relatives could sit and uh, get some solace or feel more comfortable. Then this is the large Ayurveda hospital. So at the entrance of the Ayurveda hospital, we have the statue of Dhanvantari, the god of health. And I had not envisaged this, but I had thought I'd put it only as a symbol of good health. But later, when I visited the hospital in the evenings, I found that there used to be bhajans here. I mean, all the patients, some of the patients and their relatives would sit here and recite bhajans and devote songs devoted to God. That's the night scene. That's why the lights are on. This is in the night. The same hospital, Ayurveda hospital, has the central Purush Prakriti courtyard, which opens out onto the Kapha Pitta Vata courtyard or the uh, Sattva Tama Raja courtyards also. This is a small 40-bedded orthopedic hospital in a very tight plot in the city. where again we've tried to bring in some plants and all that in the operation theatre area and natural light. This is a new hospital, Ayurveda hospital, that we're doing in Karnataka. So this is just a 3D view of that. Now this is one of my favorite slides, which I would like to show once again. Both these buildings are for the same purpose, but they're a very good example of the relationship of our inner space to our outer space. When our inner space has become very greedy and it wants quick results, and it is short-sighted, it is not considering the whole nature as one, but it wants a quick result of getting quick food or quick grains or quick produce from the earth. It has created this outer space of this fertilizer factory. So this fertilizer factory would produce urea, which would give quick results, but it would degrade the soil. And this urea factory would also create so much pollution that the birds up here would start coughing. And so this is the outer space created by an inner space, which is like that. Whereas look at this is also a fertilizer factory. This one, where this outer space of these mud towers is created to create a win-win situation. These mud towers are hollow inside, and in the hollow mud towers in these walls, they have stuck pegs, hundreds of pegs on the inside of the walls. So all the birds and pigeons in this area, they enter, because it's very hot outside, they enter the tower through these holes, and when they come inside, it's so beautiful, air conditioned, dark and nice, that they sit on the pegs and roost. They sit on each of the pegs, and this entire place is full of birds in the evening. Sorry? Hello? Yeah, so this entire space is full of birds in the evening. And so when these birds sit here, they also shit. So the entire bird shit is collected at the bottom of the towers. And there's a gate at the back, which the farmer opens and removes the bird shit and uses it as manure and fertilizer for his farms. Now, in this case, the birds are happy, the farmer, human being, is happy, the soil is happy because it's getting enriched. So I keep thinking is, why can't we have situations like this, and why can't we address the problems in such a way that every constituent of nature and we as human beings are benefited. So maybe create and live in spaces that add those perennial, immeasurable dimensions to our lives. Dimensions of celebration, sanctity, empathy, goodness, and well-being. Thank you. I think I would now request the organizers to run my film. I'll stop sharing.
Yes, sir. Yes. Thank you so much, sir. We will start the movies.
यावान् वा अयमाकाशस्तावानेषु अन्तर्हृदय आकाश उभे अस्मिन् द्यावा पृथिवी अन्तरेव समाहिते उभावग्निश्च वायुश्च सूर्यचन्द्रमसावुभौ विद्युन्नक्षत्राणि यच्चास्येहास्ति यच्च नास्ति सर्वतदस्मिन् समाहितमिति
This space is the very evidence of our existence. It exists beyond the apparent paradoxes and simultaneously lives in both. It can be all-pervasive, vyapta, and subtle, sukshma at the same time, inclusive, samavishta, as well as detached or alipta. It takes on various forms, akar, while being formless, nirakar. Though attributeless, nirgun, it embodies countless qualitative saguna attributes. From this space arise innumerable diverse forms that we encounter in our everyday lives. Isn't it the ultimate canvas of all life? As the Chinese saying goes, clay forms pots, but the space within creates the essence of the pot. 30 spokes meet at a hub, but the space within them creates the essence of the wheel. Walls with windows, doors, and roof make the house, but the space within them creates the essence of the house. What concerns us in this brief exploration of space is the day-to-day, functional, existential space of the common person. It's the relationship with the space within that person's conscious and unconscious mind. Bhutakash, the measurable, tangible outer space of physical action, and Chitakash, the immeasurable, intangible inner space within our mind. Both are always reciprocally interacting and influencing each other. Isn't our journey in life basically our journey through different outer and inner spaces? Our values and attitudes that reside in our inner space shape our outer built spaces. Like our earlier attitudes of sanctity and respect towards water shape these spaces. And now, with water as a mere commodity that can be carelessly wasted and polluted, we have these spaces. Our food storage spaces, when food was considered sacred and as a gift from God. And when food has also become a commodity that can be bought, sold, and wasted. Don't today's overcrowded, cluttered environments reflect our inner clutter? Aren't these gaudy, gimmicky, commercial environments expressions of a greedy and consumerist inner space? We had interesting, organic, unpredictable, interactive streets and spaces. They have now become so monotonously boring, repetitive, secured, and predictable. Thus, becoming expressions of our closed-in, insular, isolated, insecure, and mistrusting inner space. Haven't our changing attitudes also changed our urban landmarks? Similarly, this outer space is also affecting our inner space, our spirit, moods, and feelings. Spaces that help in calming and soothing us. Spaces that are making us irritable, impatient, anxious, and tense. Don't some spaces tend to heal and rejuvenate us? Whereas some spaces make us depressed, sick, and exhausted. Which is why, on 16 March 1972, the US Supreme Court ordered the demolition of Pruitt-Igoe, a famous housing landmark of modern American architecture in St. Louis, because its spaces made the residents sick, depressed, antisocial, and violent. Then, what could be the salient physical and psychological factors that lend these peculiar positive and negative qualities to our daily spaces? Multiple, tangible, intangible, intermeshed, interwoven factors, all synergizing to create that ultimate holistic experience of space. Different shapes and forms create different spatial experiences. So does the quality of light. The quality of sound too adds a new dimension to the same space. Different scales, proportions, and volumes articulate the space. The space changes when the width changes. And even when the height is modified. Wouldn't varying the degree of opacity and transparency change the spirit of the same space? The removal of the tree and plants can take away some of the charm too. Diverse materials, textures, and colors have the potential to alter the spatial ambience. Spaces created with indigenous materials display a natural, organic warmth. As against those built or clad with imported alien materials. Different materials and their structural spanning systems influence the quality of space too. The spatial character is decided by the structure's response to climate. even different socio-cultural perceptions and behavior will create different organizational patterns and varied types of spaces. Varied activities add a new dimension to the quality of space. Diverse spaces are created in response to diverse religious beliefs. Intangible factors like memory and emotional conditionings can also alter the spatial experience. Each person's unique mental state can decide on the spatial experience. Beautiful space ignored by the irritated mind. A dirty, drab lane ignored by the happy, joyous mind. Movement enables the intriguing unfolding of spaces. Even the physically and mentally challenged people experience space in their own very special way. All these factors and many more lend that unique character to each space. We now see that space is such an important constituent of our existential makeup, without which we cannot exist, not even for a nanosecond. When an improved quality of our outer space can help in improving the quality of our lives, why are we so insensitive to it and take it for granted? Why are we so disrespectful and indifferent to our living spaces? Can we bring about that sense of order, harmony, and beauty in our spaces and in our lives? Why do we take pride in living in spaces that are so commercial, cluttered, vulgarly conspicuous, overconsumptive, expensive, and non-sustainable? Can we live in spaces that are simple, uncluttered, dignified, and sustainable? This unsustainable consumption takes a toll on nature's space. Leading to climate change with erratic floods, hurricanes, and melting snow caps. What have we done to our modern day work environments? Can we not infuse some nature, beauty, and joy in them? Why were our earlier living spaces harmonious and unified with that sense of belonging and integrity? Why have they become so incongruous and fragmented with that sense of alienation? Do we need a dangerous, debilitating pandemic like COVID-19 to force us to take a pause and re-examine our lifestyle with its excessive consumption? Isn't our personal space being encroached upon? Why do we create, accept, and then tolerate this partial inequity and injustice? Why do we divide? And then fight over these notional imaginary space boundaries? Can our true understanding of space help us to unify rather than divide? Can we feel space as that pause and silence in our lives? Can living as an inseparable part of this unified space inspire empathy in us? Can space encourage tolerance by granting each one their space? How can we create that space within and without, which could translate into greater harmony, compassion, and joy in our lives? Though this space is embodied in trillions of different forms and identities in this universe, aren't these forms essentially the same unqualified oneness and energy of this universe? Being one of these trillions of space containers myself, Am I not everything and nothing? Then, wouldn't our inner space merge and become one with the wholeness of that omnipresent universal space? Thus, dissolving the Dvaita, the other.
पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः
So that was a wonderful presentation and the movie.
Thank you.
So, and a very inspiring film that we saw, and so apt to what we have been talking about, so far. As we saw, actually, and heard from you, there's so many architectural cues that can provide reinforcements to the desired behaviors that we would like to see enacted in specific place types. Your examples showed that. In other words, architecture is the physical mean, while the key factors that architects need to pay attention to include safety, social connectedness, ease of movement, sensory stimulation, and more concrete measures encompass light, colors, art, ventilation, etc., which you showed through varied examples. Some principles of design, they can comprise balance, proportion, symmetry, and rhythm, and they can introduce a sense of harmony. Colors, on the other hand, have a very simple logic behind them. As you showed in animation, the warmer the color is, the more compact the space actually becomes. They can also evoke feelings of comfort that you showed in the hospitals and stimulate communication, like you showed in your school courtyard, the trees communicating to everyone. Light depends greatly on the function, and that dim light suggests a gloomy space, while a bright light defines a bigger animated appearance. Natural light stimulates production and recovery. With this, I also have a few questions that I would like to put on to you to further understand your, your concepts and your way that you have been designing your buildings for such a long time. You have done a lot of work actually to sensitize people about the importance of space. Could you share with us as to why is that so? Like you're always talking about space.
I thought the film would have given you that answer. Like,
Yeah, it has. It has.
like the
Yeah, it has.
space.
Okay.
Yeah, we take the space for granted, and that's why we are so insensitive to it. Like you ask someone
Yeah.
when he comes back, from somewhere, you ask him how big was the room, what was
Hmm.
the color of the room, how did he feel there, and most of the times they are not very, uh, articulate about it as to they don't even remember. So I think it is very,
Hmm.
very important for us to understand this, the the quality of space, like what is space, and basically space is that
Hmm.
um, undivided and nirgun nirakar was there. Like it is like that.
Hmm.
We are adding the guna and the akara to it as architects. So
Okay.
it is our responsibility to be sensitive to it and respect it when we do things. When we make our own space. And if and in
Hmm.
the scriptures also it is mentioned that a person who can harmonize his inner space with the outer space that he lives in is called as Saradaya. Saradaya. So I,
Hmm.
I wish more and more of us could become Saradayas.
Hmm. Okay. Okay. So your new book, Wanderings and Ponderings, which is recently being launched by you, is about life, places, and spaces. And I quote: "Here are some of my wanderings from one horizon to the next, traversing this worldly quest, and my ponderings from one thought to the other, and then to no other." It's such beautiful, insightful lines, and such a beautiful book. I have gone through your whole book, sir. It's really amazing. Could you please share with us some very important anecdote about the book, like while when you were writing or when you got about the idea of the book or something like that? Could you share with us?
Mm. Like this book, actually, though it was compiled, edited, and written during this pandemic, because I had a lot of
Okay,
free time then, so I could do that. But
okay.
actually, this book is written or drawn at different stages during the last 50 years. Some of the sketches in this are almost 50 years old. Some poems are 50 years old. So the
Hmm.
poems and the sketches in this book are are from this large span of life, about 50 years. Only thing what I've done is I've tried to create a certain continuity and a certain thematic continuity and give a certain thematic continuity to these
Hmm.
thoughts and sketches. And
Hmm.
again, in this also, I'm talking about the two inner and outer. The wanderings depict and the sketches depict my outer wanderings, and whereas the writings they depict my inner ponderings, at the same time. So
Hmm.
I always feel that we need to strike the right balance as a human being and also as an architect between the measurable and the immeasurable in life. So that is why
Okay.
this book has come about. And this book is
So
has
you'll be
also, like my earlier book was more about architecture, but this book is also more. It has a more universal appeal because what I've been noticing, the kind of responses that I'm getting from all over the world, different places. I mean, people who are
hmm.
non-architects are also vibing with it and resonating with it, and because it has certain a universal stand in it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Very nice. So you use your pandemic time to the fullest, I suppose. I think
Yes, it
so.
is.
It was really good. Yeah.
And some
So
post
in your
production
in
stuff
your
for the
book
movie
you
also.
have
Sorry.
okay, okay. Oh, great, great, oh, great. The movie also was made during the time.
No, no, movie was made
Okay,
shot earlier, but some post production
okay,
activities were done later.
okay. So in your book, so you have quoted is a quote from Henry Cartier. Photography is an immediate reaction, whereas drawing is a meditation.
Yes.
Could you elaborate a little more on
It
that?
is, yeah, it is not my quote, so but I can try and elaborate on what he is trying to say. Henri Cartier-Bresson
Yeah.
was a very eminent photographer. Some of his Yellowstone photographs and even portraits of people are still fantastic. But even a photographer could say something like that is very
Mm.
uh, it's very remarkable. Because
Mm.
what we also notice, like I also notice when I travel to some places and when I'm with my mobile or with my camera, I shoot. I like something, I shoot. So it's like a reaction. I shoot and then I see it sometime much later, sometime, or I keep it and it is lost there. But when I'm sketching, what happens is I get absorbed in that whole atmosphere in that scenario, and I tend to what happens is that the subject object division tends to blur with me as the subject drawing and the nature as the object which is there. So the subject and object division blurs, and when that blurs, a sense of oneness happens, which could be called meditation.
So you actually get absorbed in the space when you are
Right.
drawing or sketching.
Yes.
So the space absorbs you completely and you become one with the space.
Yes.
I think that's what you are trying
Yes.
to say.
Yes.
And that's a very good thought. I think
Yes.
our young generation and even the architects, I won't say just the students, but also the architects, I think we should practice much more of this, because I think it definitely would, go a long way in improving our design sense or whatever like that. So your movie that we saw is your story of your journey, both outwards and inwards. Uh, and you said you shot the movie, I think slightly before the pandemic
Before,
and then
before.
afterwards, a little bit
Otherwise,
of. Could
I
you
wouldn't
share
have
some?
got so many crowds in the
Yeah,
movie.
yeah. Could you share some interesting incident that happened during the making of that film and that stays with you till now, which or made you to take some decision or something like that during the movie?
Hmm. There's a lot of interesting places and incidences which happened. But one small incident I remember is that we had this Rahul Cheslani, who was a assistant director, so who was helping around with various things. And he, when the movie was, I think, three-fourth done, he said that this movie, the script, and whatever we used to discuss and whatever we used to shoot, and the script also he had read. So he said that has influenced him so much that it has changed his perception of space. So when he goes home, he started looking at his home also in a different way, organizing it and reorganizing it in a certain way in order to make it nice, or make it more harmonious and more with that sense of belonging, So even while doing the film, it changed his perception of space to his own personal space. That happened.
Yeah. So everyone got absorbed in the space, even while making the
Yes,
movie. So it's like,
kind of.
yeah, yeah. So that must have been your aura of how you were
So,
trying to
and
explain things to
yeah,
people.
and another thing which sometimes people saw, or when they were doing it, they said that it is a real eye opener. They said we never thought that we were living in such spaces. They said, so this is
Yeah,
something which has happened here.
and that's really wonderful. That's really wonderful, actually.
Mm.
So there's this Dr. Sergio Altomonte, an architect at an associate professor at the Nottingham University. He specified that building and urban spaces should be designed first and foremost around their occupants. The importance of architecture as a trigger to physiological, and psychological well-being is nowadays becoming a topic of significant relevance. Do you think the architectural profession is taking this aspect into cognizance seriously in designing spaces?
A few of them are, a few of them, but most of uh, the way in which architecture is practiced today, I do not think that this understanding or this factor is really uh, built into the design.
Hmm.
So
Mhm.
something has to be done for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe there could be some. How about in India? Do you think in India it's happening, or
No,
it's
no,
not happening
not
much, as you
happening.
said? No.
No,
That could be due to various reasons, right?
many reasons. And one of the major reasons is because our
Could
inner,
you?
inner space has become like that. The society at large thinks in a certain way. The society at large wants something like that. The society at
Hmm.
large is more interested in a flashy, gaudy wrapping rather than a
Hmm.
more meaningful content. So the architects kind of
Hmm.
fall prey to that demand.
Yeah, so sometimes it is also not very easy to convince the client about the way you would have perceived space. And so, how does one approach them? Like unless and when you're like a general practitioner, not a very high person or a highly placed person or established architect, they don't tend to. The client doesn't tend to listen. The thing is like. Um, I was talking to a client just very recently for a villa project, and I said we should have a sit out, so that when you open, you're outside. And
Mm.
I had the lady saying, "But I am creating space, but I'm just taking it inside, so my space becomes bigger." So I'm enclosing the space, so I get a bigger space. So it's very difficult to convince them. Do you think you have some tips as to how to offer to people as to how one should go about it?
Uh, each client is different, and so an architect also needs the skills uh, of a PRO also, or maybe a skills of an orator or a skills of a dramatist in order to convince the client many times. In
Negotiator.
it helps in negotiation everything. The architect is not just a designer, but to be a good architect or in order to get his or her projects materialized, you need to do a lot of other
Hmm.
you can follow different ways of convincing. You could have animation, you could have you could थोड़ा नाटक कर सकते हैं कुछ भी बहुत कुछ कर सकते हैं
Picture.
in my case what happens is I fortunately I have been I mean I choose my clients, so many times if there are 4 or 5 clients which come to me, I normally take about 2 or 3 of them. So I try to see first in the initial stages only whether our values are matching, whether we are on the same wavelength, and whether we would carry forward
Hmm.
this project in a proper way. So that's why this
Yes.
does happen there also, but less to a lesser extent.
Yeah.
So one possibility is to be be a little selective in the beginning, because I
Hmm.
don't think we need so many big projects or so many big projects to survive. To live a good
Yeah.
simple
Yeah.
life, a
Yes.
simple life, you don't need that much clientele and that much money. So our as you
Hmm.
were talking about simplicity and this thing, simplicity is it gives a lot of freedom also. So because my
Hmm.
needs are less and because I can live a simple life, I can have a lot of freedom to say no to a client, to refuse a job, you know, and to do so many things like this. So,
No, 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 very relevant. I mean, I
yeah,
think you have said something a very relevant thing.
yeah.
Yeah, because in the beginning, when I also started practice, and somebody would say, "Do you know that other architect is doing 500 projects?" I said, "Really? Can anyone do that?" I mean, I won't go beyond, maybe 10, 15 in different stages of it, or maybe maximum 20 at one stage. After some years, definitely not in the first 5 years. I suppose
Yes,
500 projects at a time, which is very difficult. So
yes.
yeah, that's a very valid point you touched. I think that is a one more point is now that how do we take this, because through our simple talks we are trying to take it to the common man, but also to the students in the building industry and the architects and the designers. How do you think we could incorporate this very important design element, the fifth element, which encompasses all the other four elements actually: light, which is, you say, fire, air, earth and water. Because if these four are now, I mean, these four would become the part of the fifth element. I mean, they are encompassed in that. How do we actually do this in our pedagogy in the colleges and
That is
other
that is
places
what
and
our
try to do that?
that is what our educational institutions are supposed to teach or impart, this knowledge as to how can we shape space, how can we lend a certain quality to a certain space for a certain activity. So that is important,
Hmm.
and that one learns as one progresses in life. But we
Okay.
cannot do without
Okay.
space.
Yes, sir, that is true. That
Do
is
we have
absolutely true.
do we have any questions from the
Hmm.
audience?
Hmm. I will read some questions now, sir, from the audience, which during the registration they have sent it to us. And first, I will take them, and after that, if we have in the chat box some more questions, then I will be just
There
taking
was
them. The
something in
first
the
question.
no something in the chat here which asked for
Okay.
the where can we buy and download the book Wanderings and Ponderings. So
Sir.
can we
Yeah,
uh,
we. I,
right here?
you
I
or
just
you can
typed this.
send it to me, sir. I will be sending. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
Fine.
just
That is
typed
fine, sir. Yeah.
1 second. Yeah, this is it. Now how do I send it? Gone. Enter. Where? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Let's go. I just read that while I was.
Hmm. 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 Okay. So I'll start first. I'll take these questions which have come through registrations.
Yes. Okay.
How about spatial planning? How would spatial planning play an important role, specifically in high-rise residential buildings post-COVID situation?
Spatial planning will play a role in any situation. Any situation, it is important, except that it would have a little more limitations in a particular in a high-rise planning. That's all. And post-COVID, I don't know because I don't think COVID is here to stay. I personally feel. I mean, it is one of the phases in life in this long. What million-year-old history of mankind or something like that. It's a small part area, and
Mm-hmm.
even the present buildings did function okay in COVID when they had when they had isolation and lockdown and distancing. So I don't think we should design specifically for COVID, but if one could design spaces which allow for a distance which enables privacy, which enables solitude, which enables connectivity with nature, that is there. If that can happen, it will automatically help in the uh, COVID situation also.
Mm. I generally, as an architect, I also keep on talking about how we should be decongesting. I think I had one something I spoke about. We had ill-equipped cities, and suddenly we had this industrialization, and everyone just rushed to the cities. So if we can now de-urbanize,
Yes,
because it is also possible now to stay, as we know from COVID, also work from home, and we de-urbanize, then we can have much more spacious spaces
yes,
and
yes.
tier 4,
And
tier 3
actually,
cities and villages
technology,
from, yeah,
technology is helping us to do that. I have always been doing
helping us
that.
do that. Yeah.
I have always been doing that. I have
Mm,
always been living in the
yeah.
nature, in the wilderness, and designing, and coming
Mm,
to the city for a
yeah.
short while, for some time, and with like by sitting here in Kolhapur, I've designed a building in UAE, in Ras Al Khaimah, in near Dubai.
Mm,
I didn't have to go there so often. I mean, the internet, with the internet and all that, my
mm,
drawings would go within a short time, within a few minutes,
yeah.
and
Yes. Yes.
things were happening.
True.
And so, as you say,
Yes. Yes.
this is a good opportunity
Mm,
for us to understand that crowding and living in a very poor environment of the cities is not a
yes.
must, is not necessary. True.
Yeah. Yes. 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 Okay, so there's another question on again special design elements to consider in public spaces regarding well-being, security, and culture identity.
I didn't understand. Sorry.
They're asking again what are special design elements to consider in public spaces regarding well-being, security, and cultural identity in a public space.
There could be many. There could be many. It depends upon your own design concept and how you look at that public
Yeah.
space, how you want that public space to function. You can put those elements, any element. It could
Mm,
be a tree, it could be a rock, it could be a book, it could be a display board, or it could be art, it could be anything.
mhm. So well-being, I think you already touched upon it that because if the nature is there, you will have a much healthier environment around. So if in the public space you bring nature, you it will be contributing to well-being.
Yes,
And
nature, art,
security wise, of course, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
art, and then maybe some
Security
cultural
wise, that yeah, yeah,
space.
yeah. So that will take care of the cultural identity of the space. And security wise, if we have to have design elements, they are telling. So what could be the design elements for security in public space?
Forget security. Forget security. Actually, forget security and say, yeah, look at
Yeah, public space
spaces.
should
No,
not be.
earlier
Yeah, I mean
spaces,
security,
like public
alleys and
spaces,
all that. Yeah.
public spaces had open access, accessibility. Those spaces look so different. Now they have these big walls and grills all
Yeah.
around, and only then the space
Hmm.
becomes less accessible. For security of women and ladies and all that, there could be some people around, maybe more
Hmm.
light and more, openness and transparency.
Hmm.
You know?
Hmm. Hmm. There is this one. Next question is about how can architecture be more inclusive of nature? How does an architect associate with nature? I think your designs have
Yes,
already showed
they have
it
already
actually, your
shown that.
movie
I
and the
know
other one. But if you want to touch upon, okay, so we'll go to the next question in that case. Um, do you feel the space first, or
Sorry.
do you design a space first? Do you feel the space first, or do you design a space first?
I see the empty space that is my site. Whatever is there, its topography, it's the trees there or the rocks there or whatever. And while I'm
Mm,
sketching and while I'm drawing, I
mm,
close my eyes and I feel the space. I move around in that space with closed eyes, and
mm,
uh, I feel the space first on the paper in my mind, and later I get it built, and then it is felt, literally, really felt by everybody. So, but one has
mm,
to have that
mm,
visualization of how that space would look like, what would 10 meters height and 5 meter by a 5 meter width look like, how that space would look like. One needs to be able to visualize that space in order to move through it and feel it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is true. I think you showed that also with an example that like you about that rock that you went there, you felt the space, and then you designed the space around it. So I
Yes.
think through your presentation also you did answer that question. And this is from Anu. What are your views on how jail architecture should be designed?
Huh. It depends on, see, basically what are jails meant for? Jails are supposed to reform the
Yes.
criminal. They are not supposed to punish a criminal. What tends to happen nowadays, the people, the way they look at it, they look at it as a punishment. But we should look at it as a place where the criminal is reformed, and that is why when if I am supposed to design, given a I am asked to design a jail, what I would like to do is I would like to strike the right balance between control and freedom. There has to be
Yes.
control. I mean that we can't allow the person to escape, but there needs to be freedom also for him to move around, to do this, to do that, to express something. So
Mm.
a good jail design will always be the right balance, right dynamic balance between control and freedom,
Mm.
which is what I try to do in
Yeah,
my
that's very true.
in my drug de-addiction center, because it was like a 5 weeks. They're not supposed to go out anywhere. They were to stay within that building. So it was like a jail
Mm.
for them. It was like a jail for five
Mm.
weeks.
Mm. 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 Okay, sir. The next question is about from Dipali. I mean, I think this already you have spoken, but still, what is the relationship between exterior and interior spaces? I think you already spoken explicitly
Yes,
about
it
that.
is.
Do you
Yes,
want to add any point to that, sir?
because I think these questions were posed before my
Yeah.
presentation. So anyway,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
what is
Okay.
another bit?
Okay.
I think
Okay.
most important space that we
I
should
will
not.
just.
Most important
What is
space.
sensory design?
No, no. I was just trying to
Yes, sir.
answer that
Yes,
one.
sir. Yes, sir.
I'm going to add one point to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interior space and
Yes, sir.
exterior space. So when we
Yes.
are
Yes. Yes.
thinking of an interior space and exterior space and the relationship, we should
Hmm.
not forget a very important third space, which is the transitional space.
Hmm.
Between the inside space and outside space, there is a transitional space also. So that needs to be designed very beautifully. Like
Yes. Yes.
like
That's
you have
true.
the inside
That is
living
very
room, you
true.
have the outside garden, and then if you have that
Yeah. Threshold
intermediate
space.
transitional sit out on a veranda, makes it more meaningful.
Yes, sir. Yes. Yes. That's true. Now there's one more like what is the relationship between sports, leisure, recreation setups and sustainability? This is from Viraj. I do not know what actually the
I
question
didn't understand that
means.
question much. Yes, I don't know.
Yeah. What is the relationship between sports, leisure, recreation setups and sustainability? I think the question is slightly
No, sorry.
what does a concept mean to you? What does a
Concept
concept mean
concept
to
is very
you? I think
important
that's
to
a
me.
good
Concept is very important because concept is that which relates your design to the wholeness of life.
question. Yeah.
That is very important because, well, like when I'm designing a
Hmm.
hospital, for me the basic concept is how can I bring about uh, how can my design help in the healing process? How can my design contribute to the
Hmm.
healing process? That is, so there, good
Hmm.
circulation, good services, good this thing, everything is there, and good ambience and
Yeah.
all that. Everything will come about.
Hmm.
So a
Okay.
concept will relate my design to
Hmm.
the wholeness of life, totality of life, and how my design can um, add value to this quality of life, everybody's quality.
I think there is a very important question by from Shrihita about Vastu. How does Vastu impact the spaces functionally, psychologically, as people consider it the most important element in our country?
I don't design as per Vastu. I have designed. I have placed the wrong things in the wrong places according to Vastu. But I have felt that some Vastu person, without knowing the directions and all that, when they have come there, they have felt good vibrations. So,
Yeah.
so, so basically, it is a single energy which you have to uh, uh, if you, one can attune one's design to the universal energy in some way, uh,
Mm.
it helps. You know, it helps bring about the right
Yeah, that is
connectivity.
true. That is true.
This,
Yeah. So I think,
usually the one
Shrita,
who
I would
asks,
also, yeah, Shrita. So there's one element that I have been doing, and I think I also had this problem. So because I did study a little about, not little, quite a bit about Vastu thing, the Vastu Shastra, which has been translated from by Mansara, which is in 8 volumes in second year of my architecture. And I was trying to relate it to Frank Lloyd Wright's work on one side and Geoffrey Bawa's work on the other side. So it is like and I found they are very related because the Vastu that is actually in the books in our Shastras is about air and water and ventilation and the soil thing and the geology of the space. And as per that, we are supposed to design. But what is actually going around by the fly by night kind
yeah,
of
that Vastu Shastra,
practitioners
Vastu
is
Shastris.
basically not real Vastu because our
Right.
Vastu Shastra, which is written, is very scientific and as sir was telling, any space you design with good ventilation, natural light will have the best vibrations around. And you have to be, and it is, I know it is very difficult to convince the clients. I still have those problems, but I negotiate it, and but I tried my best to see that they see my point of view. And in future, actually, or in during my course, so I do negotiate what they want and what I want them to do because I know they are in the family when you're doing a house, you have a lot of pressure from 10 different people. So you're
Right.
not the only one who takes a decision. So these things are there. But I think you still, as an architect, if we start giving them better buildings with, as Sir has been talking and showing, with spaces which are filled with natural light and ventilation and good color, I think things will really
Yes.
change. People will change their perception. Yeah, it won't happen overnight, but I'm very sure it can happen. And I also have been practicing almost without any vastu thing because I came to Bangalore and they said, okay, you don't know vastu, you can't practice, sorry. And see, I'm here from 94. 94, I'm almost close to 30 years now in here, 27 years. And I think sir, as you can see, sir has a also, and there are many other people who are like that. There is a one, I think Sabu Francis. I'm not really able to understand what he's trying to say, and it's a very long thing that he has put here. But he talks about some softwares and artificial intelligence to be used for designing spaces. Would you want to comment on that? It's a very long. If I read, it's a very long comment.
I have not heard the question properly, or I have not heard his
No,
question. I
so
have not
it is
understood.
written in the chat box. It's written in the chat box. Like it's saying there's a concept called space syntax, which looks into how spaces at urban design and neighborhood level affect our behavior.
Also,
And
you,
several architects and
I am
planners
reading it.
analyze
Yeah.
their neighborhood. Uh, yeah.
Francis,
Space syntax.
space and time.
Sabu Francis. I mean, that's what. Hmm.
It's good. It is,
Would you
yeah.
want to react to that, sir?
I mean, these are like matrices which they have made. If this happens, if this can happen, it is good for the neighborhood. If this happens, this behavior is good. So, which is good in a way.
Hmm.
It is possible to use that, but
Hmm.
ultimately, also it's also your inner gut feeling also that helps,
Yes, sir.
and intuitive
This is
feeling
true.
about how people interact. Because some of it can may not be measurable, but this space syntax could add some value to the understanding of space through its measurable uh, qualities. But at the same time, the immeasurable
Hmm.
qualities are also very important.
Yeah, that is true. Actually, um, I have been very much, I think we all have been listening about parametric, the word parametric, and people talk about the softwares doing parametric. But I always keep on saying architecture was always parametric. We have so many parameters that we are supposed to look at when you are doing a design, and that is parametric. The only thing that software is trying to do is trying to give you some average uh, figures or average lines. But if you do not know yourself really what to do with the software and give the data that you need to do, your things can be absolutely um, they will just go somewhere, like you just can't. And even in the best designing software, the person who designs the software is not an architect, and the person who is an architect, he's not a software engineer or software person. So somewhere that lag has to be on the designer's head, and his intuitive feeling, as you were telling, about how to really go about the whole thing.
There
So
there is,
with this,
yeah,
I think I will,
yeah.
yeah,
But
I would one
I
last,
mean, there is a different dimension that he is pointing at, which is possible,
yeah,
which
yeah,
could
that's
work.
true, sir. That's true, sir.
And there's one more
Yeah,
question like space. Can space stimulate social interaction? Devesh
yeah, that you talked about. I
Yeah,
think.
and
Yeah,
actually,
you
yes,
talked
of course,
about
it
that.
can. It can. And one of the things my concerns is man is moving away from man. So in my
Yeah,
designs,
correct.
I always try to create equitable, open, accessible, democratic spaces which encourage interaction. I have not shown specific slides for that, but
Yeah, that is true.
I try to do that. Yes.
Yeah, yes, that is true. That is true. So with this, sir, I would request you to give one single advice, if you have to give it to all the viewers. What would that would be, or message or
Just
message?
I mean not much. I just a few words is that because we are talking about space, uh, be sensitive to space. At least your surrounding space, the space which you inhabit, and respect it and harmonize with it. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, so thank you so much. I will just wrap up the. I mean, you
Yes,
have you have there is so much that you have spoken, and I will just try to wrap up with all the thoughts.
we are
Beginning to
almost,
design the
yes,
account
almost
in the
uh,
design process. Space psychology can lead to better productivity in commercial projects, bigger sales in retail ventures, accelerated recovery in healthcare developments, as Sir showed. Nevertheless, with the absence of explicit guidelines, as Sabu Francis was trying to point out, the translation into architecture is still unclear. It will highly depend on the designer's sensitivity, creativity, and understanding of the research. Part of the problem is that much of the work in the field is very psychological and behavioral, and it doesn't easily translate into specific design recommendations. At the end of the day, design is quite complex, and so are the individuals inhabiting these spaces. Does architecture matter? Absolutely. Can it insulate people from the political circumstances around them? No. But still, psychology of space is in fact the study of human relations and behaviors within the context of built and natural environments both, and having a direct impact on your subconscious, contributing to your emotions and perceptions through that special part of your brain that reacts to the geometry of the space that you occupy. Space design becomes an inherent part of people's psychology. Though it is not the only factor involved, spaces have huge implications, and it is the architect's responsibility to shape tangible solutions for users and incorporate these ideas into the structure according to the social and psychological needs of the occupants. I heartily thank architect Shirish Beri for taking out time and sharing his valuable experience with us. It was truly inspiring. This program is being held in partnership with Dalbagh Educational Institute, deemed University Dalbagh, Agra, as institutional partners. I thank Professor Dr. Prem Kalra, Director DEI, deemed University, who has been silently taking the university to a value-based and ecological education hub with culture and cutting-edge um, technology going hand in hand. Sorry for that. I thank architect Molly Caprihan. Molly, are you there still? Hello. She was there in the beginning. I thank architect Molly Caprian, head of the department, and architect Piyush Prakash, faculty department of architecture DEI, for co-hosting the session with us. And I also thank all of you participants for actively participating in the webinar with extreme enthusiasm. The next in our series of Simple Talks 21 is on safe spaces and places. We will share the dates and other details very shortly. I leave you with this thought to ponder upon. What influences do the spaces in your life have on your mental well being? Thank you once again. Stay healthy, stay safe, and have a great weekend. Thank you all. And
Thank
thank you
you.
so much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Molly. Thank you, Piyush. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
everybody. And thank you, Sagar. Thank you, Nilesh. All the people from CGBMT who has been doing. Thank you, Devrani. Thank you all.